Number 1. The Subterranean Labyrinth of Derinkuyu. Beneath the wind-swept plains of Cappadocia in central Turkey lies a discovery so vast and complex that it defies conventional historical timelines and challenges our understanding of ancient human survival. For centuries, the villagers of Derinkuyu lived atop what they believed to be simple cellars, unaware that their homes sat upon the roof of one of the most sophisticated underground cities ever unearthed by modern archaeology. It was not until 1963, when a local resident named Demir Ozkanak knocked down a wall in his basement while renovating his home, that the true scale of this subterranean marvel began to reveal itself. Behind the plaster and stone lay not a storage room, but a dark, narrow tunnel leading into the abyss. What followed was decades of excavation that peeled back layer after layer of earth, revealing a vertical metropolis plunging more than 85 meters deep, comprising 18 distinct levels and housing thousands of rooms, stables, churches, wineries, and schools. The sheer engineering prowess required to construct such a facility without modern machinery is staggering, yet what truly terrifies historians is not just its size, but its purpose and origin. Carbon dating and archaeological analysis suggest that parts of Derinkuyu may date back to 8000 BCE, predating the known civilizations of Mesopotamia and Egypt by millennia. This implies that a highly organized society existed in Anatolia during the Neolithic period, capable of mobilizing massive labor forces and executing precise architectural plans long before the invention of the wheel or written language. The labyrinth is not merely a shelter, it is a self-contained ecosystem designed for long-term habitation. Air circulation systems carved with mathematical precision ensure fresh oxygen reaches the deepest chambers, while hundreds of ventilation shafts connect the levels like the lungs of a sleeping giant. Stone doors weighing up to half a ton could be rolled shut from the inside, sealing off entire sections of the city against invaders or environmental catastrophes. These doors feature small peepholes, allowing defenders to observe threats without exposing themselves, a tactical sophistication that mirrors military bunkers of the 20th century rather than ancient dwellings. But who were these people, and what were they hiding from? The standard narrative posits that Derinkuyu was used by early Christians fleeing Roman persecution, yet the lower levels contain no Christian iconography and exhibit construction techniques far older than the Roman Empire. Some researchers argue that the upper layers were indeed modified by later inhabitants, but the foundational structure belongs to an unknown precursor culture. The terror instilled in archaeologists stems from the implication that humanity has forgotten a chapter of its own history. If a civilization capable of building Derinkuyu 8,000 years ago, where are their records? Why is there no mention of such advanced communal living in the annals of Sumer or Babylon? The silence of the historical record is deafening. Moreover, the layout of Derinkuyu suggests a society living in constant fear. The complexity of the escape routes, the hidden wells, and the secure food storage facilities indicate a population expecting imminent disaster. Was it war, climate change, or something else entirely? Recent geological surveys have identified fault lines near the site, suggesting that seismic activity may have played a role in the city's design, but this does not explain the defensive militarization of the space. The deeper one descends, the more the atmosphere shifts from domestic to desperate. The lowest levels are cramped, dark, and devoid of comfort, designed purely for survival. Here, the air is thin, and the weight of the earth above presses down with tangible force. Excavators have reported feelings of unease and claustrophobia that persist even after leaving the site, a psychological residue that some attribute to the collective trauma embedded in the stone. There are also rumors of sealed chambers that remain unexplored, blocked by debris or deliberately collapsed by ancient hands. Local legends speak of tunnels that extend for miles, connecting Derinkuyu to other underground sites across Cappadocia, forming a network that spans the entire region. If true, this would represent a coordinated effort on a scale previously thought impossible for prehistoric societies. The evidence of animal bones and agricultural tools confirms that livestock and crops were kept underground, allowing the population to survive sieges that lasted months or even years. This level of preparedness suggests a cyclical pattern of catastrophe, a recurring threat that forced generations to retreat beneath the earth. Yet the ultimate question remains unanswered. What caused the abandonment of such a magnificent refuge? The upper levels show signs of gradual decay, but the lower levels appear to have been left in haste. Personal items, pottery, and tools were found scattered in the corridors, as if the inhabitants fled suddenly, leaving behind everything they owned. Did they emerge into a changed world? Did the threat vanish, or did it evolve into something worse? The mystery of Derinkuyu is not just about architecture, it is about the fragility of human civilization and the secrets buried beneath our feet. As we continue to dig, we may find that the past is not a linear progression of improvement, but a series of rises and falls, with knowledge lost and rediscovered in cycles we are only beginning to comprehend. The silence of the underground city speaks volumes, warning us that what we know of history is merely the tip of the iceberg, resting precariously above the depths of forgotten truth. Number 2. The impossible machining of the Puma Punku megaliths. High in the Andes Mountains of Bolivia, near Lake Titicaca, lie the shattered remnants of a site that continues to baffle mainstream archaeology. Puma Punku, a subsidiary of the Greater Tiwanaku complex, is not merely a collection of ancient ruins, it is a graveyard of impossible engineering. The scattered megaliths here are composed of red granite and gray andesite, materials ranking among the hardest on the Mohs scale, yet they are cut with a precision rivaling modern diamond-tipped machining. When 19th-century explorers first documented the site, they assumed the stones had been cast in molds from a lost concrete-like substance, simply because the alternative, that primitive humans with stone tools could achieve such flawless geometry, was deemed scientifically impossible. The largest of these blocks, famously known as the H blocks, weigh an estimated 130 tons and feature perfectly straight machine-milled grooves uniform in thickness to within a fraction of a millimeter. What terrified early archaeologists and continues to disturb modern researchers who examine the data objectively is the presence of equidistant drill holes penetrating the solid rock. These holes exhibit a consistent helical striation pattern, the exact signature of a high-speed core drill operating under immense downward pressure. Mainstream science insists the Tiwanaku culture, supposedly inhabiting the area around 500 to 1000 CE, carved these stones using nothing but harder river stones, sand, and bronze chisels. Yet experimental archaeology has repeatedly failed to replicate even a single groove in diorite or andesite using these primitive methods without shattering the stone or wearing down the tools in minutes. The sheer volume of material removed from Puma Punku would have required a workforce operating continuously for centuries, yet the site shows no evidence of gradual construction. There are no quarry marks, no discarded failed attempts, and no gradual refinement of technique. The stones appear to have been manufactured with a sudden, complete mastery of advanced technology, and then abruptly abandoned. Furthermore, the stones were not merely cut, they were interlocked. The surfaces feature complex recessed indentations designed to grip metal clamps, which were then poured with molten metal to hold the massive blocks together in a state of tension-resistant unity. Metallurgical analysis of the residual traces found in these indentations reveals an alloy containing platinum, a metal requiring temperatures exceeding 1,700 degrees Celsius to melt, a thermal capability supposedly non-existent in the pre-Columbian Americas. The implications are deeply unsettling. If the Tiwanaku possessed the technology to machine granite with diamond-level precision and smelt platinum, where did this knowledge originate, and why did it vanish without a trace? The standard narrative attempts to dismiss the anomalies by attributing them to natural weathering or later Incan modifications, but the stratigraphy and uniformity of the cuts defy such explanations. The stones at Puma Punku do not look like the work of a developing civilization. They look like the remnants of a highly advanced industrial facility that suffered a catastrophic explosive destruction. The blocks are scattered across the landscape as if thrown by a colossal force, radiating outward from a central point in a pattern mimicking a directional blast. This has led to theories suggesting Puma Punku was not a temple but a machine, or perhaps a power plant, destroyed in an ancient cataclysm. Whether one accepts the extreme theories or not, the physical evidence carved into the stone remains an undeniable enigma. The builders of Puma Punku possessed a mastery over matter we are only just beginning to reacquire, leaving behind a silent, shattered testament to a level of technological achievement that the modern world is deeply uncomfortable acknowledging. Resting in the corroded silence of a museum drawer for decades before its true nature was revealed, the Antikythera Mechanism stands as the most disquieting artifact of classical antiquity. Discovered in 1901 by sponge divers off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera, this fragmented lump of bronze and wood was initially dismissed as mere decorative junk, perhaps part of a clock or an astrolabe. It was not until the mid-20th century, with the advent of X-ray imaging and later high-resolution computed tomography, that the world realized it was looking at something that should not exist. The device, dating back to approximately 150 BCE, is a hand-powered analog computer of such staggering complexity that it rewrites the history of human technological development. Encased within a wooden box no larger than a shoebox, the mechanism contains at least 30 interlocking bronze gears meticulously cut with triangular teeth designed to model the movements of the sun, moon, and 5 known planets with astronomical precision. What terrifies historians is not just the mechanical sophistication, but the mathematical knowledge required to design it. The gear ratios are based on the Metonic cycle, the Saros cycle, and the Callippic cycle, complex astronomical periods that track the synchronization of lunar and solar years over decades. To encode these cycles into physical gear teeth requires a level of computational understanding that mainstream history claims did not emerge until the invention of logarithms and calculus in the 17th century. Yet here it is, 2,000 years prior, crafted by hands that supposedly lacked even the concept of zero. The inscriptions on the device, deciphered only recently, serve as a user manual, detailing the positions of celestial bodies and predicting eclipses with an accuracy that rivals modern algorithms. This implies that the Greeks, or perhaps a predecessor culture they inherited the technology from, possessed a scientific paradigm far removed from the philosophical mysticism typically attributed to the era. The existence of the Antikythera Mechanism suggests that the ancient world was not a dark age of superstition, but a period of advanced engineering that was systematically lost. Why is there no record of similar devices? Why do we find no other examples of such geared mechanisms in the archaeological record of Greece, Rome, or Egypt? The silence is profound. Some scholars argue that this was a unique masterpiece, a one-off creation by a genius like Archimedes, but the precision of the manufacturing suggests standardized production techniques, implying a workshop capable of mass-producing such instruments. If so, where are they? Did they melt down for their bronze during the countless wars that ravaged the Mediterranean, or was the knowledge deliberately suppressed? The implications extend beyond astronomy. If the ancients could mechanize the cosmos, what else could they compute? Could they have modeled weather patterns, tidal forces, or even ballistic trajectories? The mechanism challenges the linear narrative of progress, suggesting instead that humanity once reached a peak of mechanical ingenuity, only to fall into a millennia-long amnesia. The terror lies in the realization that our current technological dominance may be equally fragile. The Antikythera Mechanism is a ghost from a future past, a reminder that knowledge is not cumulative by default, but can be erased by catastrophe, war, or ideological shift. As we stare into the intricate teeth of those bronze gears, we are forced to confront the possibility that we are not the first civilization to master the mechanics of the universe, and that the ruins of our own age may one day be viewed with the same bewildered awe by those who dig through our debris long after we are gone. Number 4. The Baghdad Battery and the Lost Age of Electrochemistry. In the dusty archives of the Iraq Museum in Baghdad sits a small, unassuming clay jar that has sparked one of the most contentious and unsettling debates in the history of science. Discovered in 1936 during excavations at Kujut Rabu, just south of Baghdad, this artifact, along with several similar vessels found in the vicinity, dates back to the Parthian or Sassanid periods, roughly between 250 BCE and 224 CE. At first glance, it appears to be a simple storage container, but its contents tell a different story. Inside the jar is a copper cylinder sealed with asphalt or pitch, into which an iron rod is suspended, isolated from the copper by the sealant. When filled with an acidic liquid, such as vinegar, lemon juice, or grape juice, this arrangement generates a voltage of approximately 1 to 2 volts. This is the fundamental structure of a galvanic cell, a battery. The implication is terrifyingly simple. The ancient peoples of Mesopotamia may have possessed the knowledge of electrochemistry nearly 2,000 years before Alessandro Volta invented the voltaic pile in 1800. Mainstream archaeologists have long dismissed the Baghdad Battery theory, arguing that the jars were used for storing sacred scrolls or that the metal components were merely structural supports for holding papyrus rolls. However, no scrolls were ever found in these specific jars, and the careful isolation of the iron rod from the copper cylinder suggests an intentional design to prevent electrical shorting, a detail needed for mere storage. If these were indeed batteries, what were they powering? There were no wires, no light bulbs, no motors found in the archaeological record of the region. This absence of obvious electrical appliances has led skeptics to reject the theory outright, but it fails to account for the possibility of uses that leave no physical trace. Electroplating, for instance, requires only a low-voltage current and a solution of metal salts. Indeed, many artifacts from the same period and region exhibit a thin, uniform coating of gold on silver or copper bases, a finish that is difficult to achieve through traditional fire gilding methods without leaving uneven patches or damaging the base metal. Electroplating would produce the precise, flawless finishes seen on these ancient treasures. If the Parthians had mastered electroplating, they possessed a level of chemical and electrical understanding that rivals 19th century industrial science. But the mystery deepens when we consider the source of this knowledge. The Parthian Empire was a successor state to the Seleucid Empire, which itself inherited much of the territory and knowledge of Alexander the Great's conquests. Did Alexander's armies uncover even older technologies in the libraries of Babylon or Persia, or did this knowledge originate independently within the cradle of civilization? The silence of the historical record regarding electricity is deafening. There are no texts describing lightning capture, no diagrams of circuits, no philosophical treatises on the nature of electron flow. Yet the physical evidence sits in the museum, a silent accuser of our historical amnesia. The terror stems from the realization that technology does not always leave a paper trail. If a society can master a technology like electrochemistry and use it solely for artisanal purposes like gilding, the knowledge can vanish completely if the social structure collapses. The Baghdad Battery is not just a curiosity, it is a warning. It suggests that the timeline of human innovation is not a steady climb upward, but a series of peaks and valleys where profound discoveries are made, utilized, and then lost to the sands of time. As we look at the corroded iron rod and the tarnished copper cylinder, we are forced to ask how many other impossible technologies are hiding in plain sight, misidentified as ritual objects or mundane tools, waiting for us to recognize the genius of our ancestors. The battery remains a testament to a hidden sophistication, a spark of brilliance in the ancient world that flickered out before it could ignite the Industrial Revolution, leaving us to wonder what else we have forgotten.
Number 5. The Vitrified Forts of Scotland, stone melted by unknown fire. Scattered across the rugged landscape of Scotland, particularly in the Highlands and the Hebrides, stand the ruins of ancient fortifications that defy geological and historical explanation. These are the vitrified forts, structures built from massive blocks of stone that have been subjected to such intense heat that they have fused together into a glass-like substance. The term vitrification refers to the process of turning something into glass or a glassy substance through extreme heat. And in these forts, the mortar between the stones has not just hardened, it has melted and re-solidified, binding the masonry into a single monolithic shell. Mainstream archaeology has long struggled to explain how Neolithic or Iron Age peoples, supposedly lacking the fuel sources and technological means to generate such temperatures, could have achieved this effect. The standard theory posits that the forts were deliberately burned down by enemies, with wooden beams placed within the stone walls and set alight, creating a kiln-like effect that melted the stone. However, experimental archaeology has repeatedly failed to replicate this process. To vitrify stone, temperatures must exceed 1,100 degrees Celsius, sustained for a prolonged period. Burning wood, even with forced air drafts, rarely achieves such consistent, all-encompassing heat without leaving behind vast amounts of ash and charcoal residue, neither of which is found in significant quantities at these sites. Furthermore, the vitrification is often uneven, with some parts of the wall completely fused while adjacent sections remain untouched, suggesting a directed energy source rather than a generalized conflagration. The terror induced by these sites lies in the implication of a lost technology capable of generating focused, high-intensity heat. Some researchers have drawn parallels to modern industrial processes, such as plasma arc melting or laser ablation, technologies that are firmly rooted in the 20th century. Could the ancients have possessed a method of harnessing solar energy, or perhaps a chemical accelerant now lost to history, that allowed them to manipulate stone at a molecular level? The forts themselves are strategically located on hilltops, offering commanding views of the surrounding terrain, suggesting a military or defensive purpose. But why fuse the walls? Vitrification does not necessarily make a wall stronger. In fact, it can make it more brittle and prone to cracking under thermal stress. Perhaps the purpose was not structural, but symbolic or ritualistic. Or perhaps the vitrification was a side effect of a weapon, a catastrophic event that scorched the landscape and fused the stone in its wake. Legends in the region speak of dragon fire or sky fire, mythical descriptions that may preserve a cultural memory of a real, terrifying phenomenon. The silence of the historical record regarding such technology is profound. There are no texts describing the construction methods, no manuals on heat generation, no accounts of the labor involved. The forts stand as silent witnesses to an event or a capability that has been erased from our collective memory. As we examine the glossy, blackened surfaces of the fused stone, we are confronted with the possibility that the past was far more technologically complex than we dare to admit. The vitrified forts are not just ruins, they are scars on the landscape, evidence of a power that humanity once wielded and then forgot, leaving us to stare at the glassified rock and wonder what kind of fire could turn stone into liquid.
Number 6. The Saqqara Bird, Aerodynamic Anomaly of the Old Kingdom. In the dimly lit storage rooms of the Cairo Museum, amidst thousands of artifacts catalogued as religious totems or children's toys, lies an object that challenges the fundamental understanding of ancient Egyptian technological capability. Known as the Saqqara Bird, this small wooden artifact was discovered in 1898 during excavations at the Saqqara necropolis, dating back to approximately 200 BCE, though some stylistic analyses suggest it may be much older, originating from the Old Kingdom period around 2500 BCE. At first glance, it appears to be a stylized representation of a falcon, a common motif in Egyptian art associated with the god Horus. However, a closer examination reveals anomalies that defy the conventions of ancient artistic representation. Unlike other bird statues from the period, which feature detailed feathers, eyes, and legs, the Saqqara bird is starkly abstract, possessing a streamlined body, a vertical tail fin, and wings that are angled in a manner consistent with modern aerodynamic principles. Most disturbingly, the underside of the artifact bears an inscription that translates to "I want to fly," a phrase that seems incongruous for a static religious idol, but perfectly logical for a model of a flying machine. In 1971, Dr. Halil Masiha, a professor of aeronautics at Cairo University, conducted wind tunnel tests on a replica of the Saqqara bird. The results were shocking. The model generated significant lift, demonstrating stable flight characteristics when launched with a slight upward angle. The vertical tail fin, often dismissed by mainstream Egyptologists as a decorative element or a misinterpreted leg, was found to be crucial for stability, preventing the model from spinning out of control. This level of aerodynamic sophistication suggests that the creator possessed an empirical understanding of airflow and lift, knowledge that mainstream history claims was not developed until the Wright brothers' experiments in the early 20th century. If the Saqqara bird was indeed a model for a larger glider or kite, where is the rest of the technology? There are no depictions of large flying machines in Egyptian hieroglyphs, no records of aerial construction, and no archaeological evidence of lightweight structural materials like bamboo or treated linen frames capable of supporting human flight. Yet the artifact persists, a silent testament to a lost branch of engineering. Some theorists propose that the bird was used for ritualistic purposes, perhaps launched into the air to carry prayers to the gods, but this does not explain the precise aerodynamic shaping. Others suggest it was a weather vane or a child's toy, but the complexity of the design exceeds the necessity for such mundane functions. The terror lies in the implication that the Egyptians, or a precursor culture they inherited knowledge from, had mastered the secrets of flight, only to lose this capability due to societal collapse or resource depletion. The Saqqara bird forces us to reconsider the narrative of human progress. It suggests that innovation is not linear but cyclical, with peaks of achievement followed by long periods of stagnation and loss. As we hold the small wooden bird in our minds, we are reminded that the sky was not always off-limits to the ancients, and that the boundaries of what is possible may have been far wider in the past than we currently believe. The artifact remains an enigma, a whisper from a time when humanity may have looked up not just in worship, but in aspiration, having briefly touched the clouds before forgetting how to rise.
Number 7. The Dropa Stones, evidence of extraterrestrial contact in the Himalayas. Deep within the remote Bayankara Ula Mountains on the border between China and Tibet, a discovery was made in 1938 that has been systematically suppressed by governments and academic institutions for nearly a century. A Chinese archaeological expedition led by Professor Chi Pu Te stumbled upon a series of caves containing the skeletal remains of small humanoid beings with disproportionately large craniums and fragile bone structures. Alongside these remains were hundreds of smooth, disc-shaped stones, each perforated in the center and etched with microscopic hieroglyphs that spiraled outward from the hole. These artifacts, known as the Dropa Stones, became the center of a controversy that threatens to unravel the official narrative of human origins. When first examined, the stones were dismissed as primitive jewelry or ritualistic objects, but their composition defied explanation. They contained high concentrations of cobalt and other rare metals not naturally found in the region, suggesting an origin outside the local geological context. More disturbingly, the hieroglyphs carved into the stone were too fine to be read by the naked eye, requiring magnification to decipher. In the 1960s, after the stones had been confiscated and hidden by the Chinese government, a team of researchers managed to panelize fragments of the inscriptions. The translated text told a harrowing story. It described a spacecraft from the Dropa civilization crashing in the mountains 12,000 years ago, stranding its occupants among the local Han tribes. The text detailed the survivors' inability to repair their vessel and their eventual integration into the human population, interbreeding with the locals and passing down their knowledge through oral tradition. The terror instilled by this discovery is not merely the possibility of ancient alien visitation, but the implication that humanity is not solely terrestrial in origin. If the Dropa stones are authentic, they represent physical evidence of extraterrestrial contact predating all known civilizations. The systematic suppression of the artifacts, including the alleged execution of Professor Chi-Pu Tay and the disappearance of the stones into state vaults, suggests a deliberate effort to conceal this truth. Why would a government go to such lengths to hide a collection of stone discs? The answer may lie in the geopolitical and religious implications of acknowledging non-human intelligence in our ancient past. Such a revelation would challenge the foundations of major world religions and destabilize the anthropocentric view of history. Furthermore, the genetic anomalies found in some isolated tribes in the region, characterized by unusual cranial shapes and heightened cognitive abilities, have been cited by fringe researchers as biological evidence of the Dropa lineage. While mainstream science dismisses these claims as pseudoscience, the persistence of the legend and the existence of the stones themselves remain unexplained. The Dropa stones serve as a reminder that history is written by the victors and that some truths are deemed too dangerous for public consumption. As we consider the possibility that we are not alone in the universe and that we may never have been, the silence surrounding the Bayankara Ula caves becomes deafening. The stones wait in darkness, holding a message from the stars that humanity is not yet ready to hear, a testament to a cosmic heritage that has been buried under layers of denial and fear.
Number 8. The Gobekli Tepe Enigma, the world's first temple and the reset of civilization. Buried beneath the rolling hills of southeastern Turkey, near the border with Syria, lies a site that has forced archaeologists to tear up the textbooks on human history. Gobekli Tepe, discovered in 1994 by a local shepherd and subsequently excavated by German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt, is a massive stone complex dating back to approximately 9500 BCE. This date is crucial, for it places the construction of Gobekli Tepe 6,000 years before Stonehenge and 7,000 years before the Great Pyramid of Giza. More importantly, it predates the invention of agriculture, pottery, and metal tools. According to the standard model of human development, societies in this era were nomadic, hunter-gatherers, incapable of organizing the labor or resources necessary to build monumental architecture. Yet Gobekli Tepe stands as a testament to a sophisticated, sedentary society that possessed advanced engineering skills, complex symbolic language, and a unified religious ideology. The site consists of multiple circular enclosures formed by massive T-shaped limestone pillars, some weighing up to 50 tons, arranged in precise geometric patterns. These pillars are not bare. They are intricately carved with bas-reliefs of animals, scorpions, vultures, lions, foxes, and snakes, as well as abstract symbols and headless human figures. The craftsmanship is exquisite, displaying a level of artistic maturity that suggests a long tradition of stoneworking, yet no earlier examples of such art have been found. What terrified the archaeological community was not just the age of the site, but its purpose. Gobekli Tepe shows no signs of domestic habitation. There are no hearths, no storage pits, no dwellings. It was purely a ceremonial center, a temple built by hunter-gatherers who traveled from far and wide to participate in rituals that may have involved sky worship, death cults, or astronomical observation. The alignment of the pillars suggests a knowledge of celestial cycles, particularly the precession of the equinoxes, a complex astronomical phenomenon that requires centuries of observation to detect. This implies that the builders were not merely surviving, but studying the cosmos with a scientific rigor that contradicts their supposed primitive status. Even more unsettling is the evidence of deliberate burial. Around 8000 BCE, the entire complex was intentionally backfilled with thousands of tons of rubble, including broken tools, animal bones, and human skulls. Why would a society spend centuries building a magnificent temple only to bury it? Some researchers propose that this act was a response to a catastrophic event, perhaps a comet impact or climate shift associated with the Younger Dryas period, which caused widespread ecological collapse. The burial may have been a ritualistic closing of a chapter, a way to seal away the memory of a lost world. Others suggest that the site was hidden to protect its secrets from invading groups or to preserve the sanctity of the knowledge contained within. The implications of Gobekli Tepe are profound. It suggests that religion and monumental architecture did not arise as a result of agricultural surplus, as previously thought, but rather that the need to build such structures may have driven the development of agriculture. The labor required to feed the workers at Gobekli Tepe may have forced the transition from hunting to farming, flipping the causal relationship of civilization's origins on its head. This reversal challenges the materialist view of history, suggesting that spiritual or ideological forces played a primary role in shaping human society. As we stand among the silent T-pillars, we are confronted with the possibility that our ancestors were not brutish savages climbing out of ignorance, but sophisticated beings who possessed a deep understanding of the universe, an understanding that was lost when the temple was buried. Gobekli Tepe is a mirror reflecting a version of humanity that we have forgotten, a reminder that the roots of civilization are deeper and more mysterious than we ever imagined.
Number 9. The Longyou Caves, the silent megalithic quarries of China. In the unassuming hills of Zhejiang Province, near the village of Xi'anbei-kun in eastern China, lies a network of underground caverns that represent one of the most baffling and deliberately obscured archaeological discoveries of the modern era. Known as the Longyou Caves, these 24 man-made grottos were discovered entirely by accident in 1992, when local villagers decided to pump water out of what they believed to be natural ponds. As the water level dropped, it revealed not the muddy bottoms of ordinary pools, but the dark, yawning entrances to vast artificial chambers carved deep into solid siltstone. What emerged from beneath the waterline was nothing short of astonishing. Each cave is an enormous subterranean hall, some reaching heights of 30 meters and covering areas exceeding 2,000 square meters, supported by massive stone pillars left standing during excavation to bear the weight of the earth above. The walls, ceilings, and columns are covered in uniform, parallel chisel marks, each groove cut at a consistent 60-degree angle with a spacing so regular that it appears machine-generated. These striations cover every surface without exception, creating a visual texture that is both mesmerizing and deeply unsettling in its precision. Mainstream archaeologists have been unable to date the caves with any certainty, as no organic material suitable for carbon dating has been found within them, and no historical records, Chinese or otherwise, mention their construction.
This absence of documentation is itself a source of terror for historians because the scale of the project would have required the removal of approximately 1 million cubic meters of rock, a task that would have taken thousands of workers decades to complete using only hand tools. Yet there is no record of such an endeavor in any Chinese dynasty's annals, no mention in the meticulous bureaucratic archives that chronicled even minor public works projects across millennia of imperial rule. The engineering challenges alone are staggering. The caves are situated below the local water table, meaning that the builders would have needed to manage constant groundwater infiltration during construction, requiring drainage systems of remarkable sophistication. The structural integrity of the chambers has remained intact for what researchers estimate to be at least 2,000 years, despite the region's frequent seismic activity and the soft, friable nature of siltstone, which should have collapsed under its own weight long ago. The placement of the supporting pillars demonstrates an intuitive understanding of load distribution and stress points that rivals modern civil engineering calculations. Furthermore, the caves are not randomly distributed. They are aligned along precise axes, with some chambers connected by narrow passageways that suggest a coordinated master plan rather than ad hoc excavation. Some researchers have noted acoustic properties within the caves that amplify sound in specific frequencies, leading to speculation that the spaces were designed for ritualistic chanting or communication over long distances underground. Others have pointed to the absence of soot or smoke residue on the ceilings, indicating that the excavators worked without torches or oil lamps, raising the question of how they illuminated chambers buried dozens of meters beneath the surface. Mirrors reflecting sunlight down shafts have been proposed, but the geometry of the caves makes this solution impractical for the deepest sections. The purpose of the Longyou caves remains entirely unknown. They contain no carvings, no inscriptions, no altars, no burial goods, and no evidence of habitation. They appear to have been carved with immense effort and then abandoned immediately, left empty and silent for centuries before being flooded and forgotten. This deliberate emptiness is perhaps the most disturbing aspect of all. A civilization capable of mobilizing the resources to hollow out mountains does not do so without reason, yet whatever that reason was, it left no trace. Were they quarries for a structure that was never built? Were they shelters against a catastrophe that never came, or one that already had? Were they repositories for something that was later removed? The silence of the Longyou caves is not passive, it is aggressive, a void that absorbs every theory and returns nothing. As modern engineers study the chisel marks and marvel at the mathematical consistency of the grooves, they are forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Whoever carved these halls possessed tools, techniques, and organizational capabilities that exceed our current understanding of ancient Chinese technology. The caves stand as monuments to an achievement that was erased not just from memory, but from the physical record itself, leaving behind only the hollowed-out bones of the earth as proof that someone, somewhere, once undertook a project of incomprehensible ambition and then chose to let the world forget it ever happened.
Number 10. The Yonaguni Monument, the submerged geological formation of the Pacific. Off the coast of Yonaguni Island, part of the Ryukyu archipelago in Japan, lies a submerged geological formation that has ignited one of the most fierce debates in marine archaeology and geology. Discovered by diver Kiichiro Aratake in 1985, the Yonaguni Monument is a massive, terraced structure rising from the seabed at a depth of 30 meters. Spanning nearly 300 meters in width and reaching heights of 27 meters, the formation resembles a stepped pyramid with flat tops, sharp right angles, and symmetrical staircases carved into its sides. To the untrained eye, it appears to be a natural rock formation, but to those who examine the details, the evidence of human craftsmanship is overwhelming. The structure is composed of sandstone and mudstone, layers that are prone to fracturing along horizontal planes, which explains the terraced appearance. However, the vertical faces of the monument feature distinct straight cuts and right-angled corners that do not occur in natural erosion patterns. Geologists argue that these features are the result of jointing and weathering, where water seeps into cracks and freezes or expands, causing the rock to break off in rectangular blocks. Yet, this explanation fails to account for the precision of the angles, the presence of what appear to be carved pillars, arches, and doorways, and the alignment of the structure with celestial bodies. In 2001, a team led by Professor Masaaki Kimura of the University of the Ryukyus conducted extensive underwater surveys using sonar and remote-operated vehicles. Their findings were startling. They identified what appeared to be a road encircling the monument, a triangular platform that may have served as an altar, and stone tablets inscribed with characters that resemble ancient scripts. More disturbingly, they discovered relief carvings of animals, including cows and horses, and a face that bears a striking resemblance to classical human features. These carvings, if confirmed as artificial, would date the monument to a time when sea levels were significantly lower, approximately 10,000 to 12,000 years ago during the last ice age. This timeline places the construction of the Yonaguni monument in the same era as Gobekli Tepe and the potential origins of the Sphinx, suggesting a global phenomenon of monumental architecture that predates recorded history. The terror induced by this discovery is compounded by the local legends of Mu, a lost continent in the Pacific said to have been home to an advanced civilization that was destroyed by a cataclysmic flood. While mainstream science dismisses the myth of Mu as pseudoscience, the existence of the Yonaguni monument provides a physical anchor for these stories, suggesting that they may preserve a cultural memory of a real event. If the monument is indeed man-made, it implies that a sophisticated society existed in the Pacific Rim, capable of large-scale stonemasonry, astronomical alignment, and artistic expression, only to be swallowed by the rising seas at the end of the Pleistocene epoch. The suppression of this theory by mainstream academia is palpable, with many researchers reluctant to entertain the possibility of prehistoric maritime civilizations due to the lack of corroborating evidence on land. However, the absence of evidence on land may be explained by the fact that the coastal regions where such civilizations would have thrived are now underwater, buried beneath meters of sediment and ocean pressure. The Yonaguni monument stands as a silent sentinel in the deep, a challenge to our understanding of human history and a reminder that the oceans hold secrets that we have barely begun to explore. As we gaze upon the shadowy outlines of the submerged pyramid, we are forced to confront the possibility that our current civilization is not the first to rise from the ashes of catastrophe, and that the depths of the Pacific may hold the keys to a past that has been deliberately erased from our collective consciousness. The monument remains underwater, protected by the very element that likely destroyed its creators, waiting for a time when humanity is ready to acknowledge the full scope of its ancient heritage.